Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to head over to California in the United States once again, of course the home of American craft brewing, and this is a brewery who I've never actually tried anything from, so we're going to go up to Fort Bragg in the north of the state and have a taste of a beer from North Coast Brewing Company. So this is the Old Rasputin, which is a Russian Imperial Stout, and it's got very good ratings on Rate Beer and Beer Advocate, so I'm sure this will be a really excellent beer for us to try. I actually bought this one at a shop in Glasgow called Hippo Beer, who have a really nice selection of particularly American craft beers and a good selection of Scottish ones too. So if you're watching from Glasgow, do go and check them out. Their Facebook link is in the video description for you below. But anyway, as is usual with my beer reviews then, I'll take you through a very brief history of the brewery. It will only be a minute or two, but if you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. The brewery website's in the video description for you below, along with a link to my other reviews that hopefully I can do from North Coast Brewing in the fairly near future, because I found that you can actually get their beers fairly easily in Scotland now. But anyway, as I've told you before, North Coast Brewing are from Fort Bragg in Northern California. I believe that's even further north than San Francisco, but the city was actually founded prior to the US Civil War as a military garrison, but before this it had actually been the home of the American Pomo tribe, but today it's well known for more of its kind of tourist value, the sort of picturesque views of the Pacific Ocean. But it's a very nice small little town. It's about 7,000 or 8,000 people who live there, and it's quite a popular tourist destination, so perhaps worth checking out if you do get over to California. But North Coast Brewing was actually founded back in 1988 by Mark Rudrich, and he is the company president and brewmaster. And originally this company opened up simply as a small local brew pub, but they've since scaled up their production quite dramatically in fact, and more recently Mark has been joined in the running of the company by Tom Allen and Doug Moody. But in 1994 they acquired the rights to continue brewing the Acme beer brand, which was actually quite popular in California back in the mid-90s, and they brew these beers along with their own range of beers, and they do have an on-site tap room and offer tours of the brewery as well. But one of the most interesting points about this brewery seems to be the love of jazz in the place, and they are actually the exclusive beer and sponsor of various jazz festivals in Northern California and also in Oregon. So if you're into your jazz music and you like good beer, then probably this is a match made in heaven for you, this one. But they do have quite a big portfolio of different beers. In their core range they've got the Red Seal Ale, Old No. 38 Stout, Scrimshaw Pilsner and Blue Star Wheat Beer. They also have in the Acme range California IPA, California Brown and California Pale Ale. I've heard that the Brown Ale is very nice actually, so hopefully I can try that sometime because it's one of my favourite styles of beer actually. But in the ultra premium range you have this guy here, the Old Rasputin Imperial Stout, Prankster Belgian, Old Stock Ale and also the Puck Saison. But they do have two other series, which are the American Artisanal and the Barrel Aged series, and I believe the Russian Imperial Stout, the Old Rasputin, is one that is in that series as well. But anyway, that's your kind of brief history of the North Coast Brewing Company. I hope you've enjoyed that anyway, but let's get on to the tasting of this one. So as you might have guessed, this beer is a Russian Imperial Stout, and of course it's named after the infamous Gregory Rasputin, and he was a mystical faith healer. And it was actually the case, if you know your Russian history at all, you'll know that Alexei, who was the heir to the Russian throne around the time of the First World War, was a haemophiliac, because many of the European royal families were actually inbred. But Serena Alexandria believed that Gregory Rasputin could heal the Tsar-in-waiting Alexei, but Rasputin was actually seen by some as being the cause of the unpopularity of the imperial family, and he was becoming a very kind of influential figure in St. Petersburg when Tsar Nicholas left to take control of the war. But it's actually known that he was killed by assassination by the Yusupov family, who married into the imperial family through the Tsar's niece. But there are many theories about the actual assassination of him and exactly how he died, and the reason for this is because when the Soviets came to power in 1917 they burned many of the documents, and of course a big reason for that was the fact that Russia lost the war to Germany in the First World War. But one of the there's really aren't sure exactly how he died, but one of the ones I heard at school was that he was poisoned, he survived, then he was shot and survived that as well, he was beaten by chains, and quite savagely in fact, and he survived that again, then the Yusupovs threw him into the river and he survived that again and climbed out, but he only died of hypothermia when he climbed out of the river. So there's a whole host of legends surrounding the death of Rasputin. But anyway, let's get on to the actual tasting of the beer. I just find Rasputin very interesting, so I thought I would add that into the video. So I'll I'll just let you have a little look at the artwork on this one, but it's a 9% Imperial Stout. I'll just check that you can see this nicely on the camera there. You can see Gregory Rasputin on the bottle there, but the commercial description of this beer says it's produced in the tradition of the 18th century English brewers who supplied the courts of Russia's Catherine the Great. Old Rasputin seems to develop the cult following wherever it goes. It's rich, intense brew with big, complex flavours and a warming finish. The Old Rasputin brand image is a drawing of Rasputin with a phase in Russian encircling it. It says, "A sincere friend is not born instantly," and he was a very trusted ally of the Russian imperial family, in fact, so I can see why they've put that on there. But I'll just let you see the bottle cap on this one. You can see the North Coast Brewing symbol on it there, but it's very nicely presented actually, and I think I'm going to keep this one because the bottle, once I've drunk it, because it is just really quite nicely presented. I like this kind of old style of Russian artwork and things. So let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting then. This guy comes in at 9.0% on the Richter scale. You can see a nice big bubble and a smoky opening there. So let's get this guy out and we'll give it a try. Without even paying too much attention to it, you can really pick up the kind of nice coffee and chocolate aromas coming out of this one. So it looks a very, very nice beer, as you can see. So it's poured a kind of sort of ebony rosewoody colour. As you can see, there's a 2-finger kind of frothy tan coloured head on this one, which is exactly what you would expect from an Imperial Stout. It looks very nice. You can't see much in the way of carbonation sticking to the side of the glass on this one, but you can see it just going up towards the bottom of that head there, so it looks really nice. If I put my fingers behind it as well, you can see that it isn't transparent at all, and there's not even a kind of ruby edge to this one. It is really dark, really kind of ebony coloured beer, but it looks absolutely beautiful. So let's give it a smell. It's quite interesting. It's actually a sort of very smooth aroma, if that makes sense. You've got some nice dark coffee in there, but you've also got a good bit of kind of sweet chocolate, I would say, as well. And you can pick up the kind of dark caramel and almost tree colour molasses aromas coming out as well. And there is a good bit of hop character coming out. You can almost pick up just a little bit. There is almost just a teeny bit of tropical-y fruit in this, but it's more of a kind of red fruit ester as well. So quite interesting little quirk on this beer actually. But it's more of a kind of dark, roasty, bitter coffee aroma that's coming out of this. But some sweet chocolate and a nice bit of dark caramel in there. All the things you would expect from an Imperial Stout. And the fruity esters just add a nice little ending to that. It's quite simple in its aroma, but it's quite deep and it has everything you would expect from the style. But I've heard the taste of this one is really where it's at. So without further ado, let's get stuck into this guy. So this is the Old Rasputin Imperial Russian Stout from North Coast Brewing in Fort Bragg, California. Slanja. That's really nice actually. A bit lighter in the mouthfeel than I was expecting, but that isn't such a big deal. It's packed full of flavour, this one. It's really nicely done. Yeah, so much like the aroma, you've got a nice chocolatey malt base in there, a little bit sweet, but I think the most prominent component of the flavour is more the kind of dark roasted coffee. That kind of comes up quite quickly in the actual taste of this one, and it builds into the mouth, so you've got a nice lingering kind of coffee bitterness of this one. It's really nicely done, in fact. But there's a nice fruity character in there too, a nice red fruity character that you just feel come towards the very front of your palate. There's just a little bit of this kind of sharp sort of plummy character coming out, but at the same time it actually does remind me a little bit of some of the tropically fruit flavours that you get from some of these Californian hops. So that's maybe something to watch out for yourself if you do try it. The fruity esters in this are quite sharp and quite sweet, so it probably is more of a kind of plum and raisin one rather than a smoother figgy feel that comes out of it, but very nice nonetheless. Yeah, fruity flavours are more sharp and more plummy and raisiny, so very, very nice balance in this one, I have to say. So you've got a nice kind of sweet chocolatey malt on this one. There's some roasted kind of caramel and sort of tree colour molasses in there too. That just goes down the middle of the tongue, but the sort of coffee bitterness builds just right before the edges of the palate there, and around the very back corners. I do want to say there is just a little bit of an earthy hop character in there, but the most prominent component in the flavour of this beer is the dark kind of roasted cocoa and coffee here. But yeah, the particular thing that impresses me with this one is the nice fruity character. The fruitiness in this one is done very nicely, but it's a nice kind of coffee bitter stout with a nice fruity edge to it, and some earthy hop character right at the back, and the roasty character is done very nicely too. The sweet chocolate in this one is actually quite mild, and there is perhaps a bit of bready character in the middle of the palate too, but there's a whole host of things going on in the flavour. The nose on this one isn't too complex, if that makes sense, but the actual blend of the flavours in the beer really are quite complex, and it's really worth taking just a little bit of time and allowing your palate to kind of adjust to all of these, because there's so much going on. Yeah, the chocolate character you'll feel just after you take the liquid off your tongue. The sweet chocolatey character is in there, but it's quite the coffee bitterness, and it's actually even maybe slightly smoky at the same time, but it's actually that kind of the smoky and coffee bitterness just takes over from this, and it's really nicely done, I have to say. So definitely worth trying this beer if you can get a hold of it. In terms of the mouthfeel, I would say it's quite full bodied, but it is a little bit lighter than you'd perhaps expect. Not quite as oily as I was expecting when I tried it, but it's got a nice smooth carbonation, but at the same time the carbonation does help bring out a little bit of that of that kind of roasted coffee bitterness. It does help out bring that element of the flavour around the back palate of the tongue, but it's slightly oily at the same time, and there's a good big lasted roasty bitterness to this one, but there is some sweet malt characteristics from the treacle sort of molasses flavours, and a little bit of the chocolate as well, particularly when the liquid's on the mouth, but it does have a nice kind of juicy fruity ester feel to it as well. And the interesting thing too is that you don't really get the alcohol warmth until you move into the aftertaste. You just feel it down here, but you don't really feel the boozy flavours when you actually have the beer on your palate. So I mean, overall, this is a really nice Imperial Stout, and it wouldn't be rated on Beer Advocate and rate beer so highly if it was a bad beer, I would say, but it's absolutely beautiful. I wouldn't say this is a sessionable beer. That's the one thing I would say about it. For me, as I always say with stouts, I really enjoy them as a tasting beer every so often, and this one to me is a sort of dessert beer, with kind of vanilla ice cream or something like that, or chocolate cake or something. It would go very well with that, but I wouldn't session this one. To me, this is a kind of nice tasting beer that you get every so often and just sip in front of the fire or something like that. Definitely that kind of beer, I would say, but very nice and definitely worth trying, and hopefully I can review a few more of the North Coast beers in the future. But anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this beer review. Let me know in the comments section below your own thoughts if you do happen to have tried it before. In the meantime, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Hopefully I can review more of the North Coast beers, and I'm sure I will do more California ones for you soon. But in the meantime, slàinte for now.